like this is your first lecture that you have had as far as 7th grade. 6th grade has been having lectures all throughout the week and even last week. And what they do is they come in and they hear a speaker, they take notes, and then they go back to their classroom and they use those notes to help with their project that they're working on. I'm not sure how you structured it last time. What we have done in the past with the other lectures is you speak and then we open it up to questions at the end. Is that okay?
That's fine, although if you have with this size group, if you have a question that comes up while I'm speaking about a particular issue, then
You're okay with that?
I'm fine with that.
Okay,
Yeah.
that'll be perfect. That's an interactive lecture. That means that we can kind of talk as questions come along. This is Miss Comfy. She is our primary guest speaker on Little Rock Central here. I know many of you have the topic of civil rights in Arkansas. And when you narrow it down to a subtopic, some of you have chosen the Little Rock 9 story. So that's probably why you were invited to this lecture. Everybody has pencil and paper. It's not rude during the lecture. I hope this is okay with you that they take notes while if something comes to mind, that you have a question, you write it down, or if she tells you something that you think is worth writing down. That's perfectly fine during a lecture. All right, and I'll open it up to you then. Thank you.
Well, my history is that I was a senior at Little Rock Central in 1957, 58. So I was right there in the middle of everything that was going on with the Little Rock 9. So what kind of a resource am I? Primary, right. But what are some of the limitations of primary resources? Yes?
That they don't know every single.
Exactly. I can only tell you as a primary resource what I witnessed directly. So I wasn't on the street the morning that the 9 came in or that Elizabeth Eckford arrived or some of those situations. But I was there for some of the events, and so I can tell you firsthand what I observed there. As you can see from some of the resources that I have down here, I have since done reading on it and trying to find out more of what people that would be secondary resources or some primary resources, and what they had to say and what they observed. So all of us who have spoken or collected information are both primary and secondary resources. Books continue to be written, articles continue to be written because the story continues. I was telling somebody the other day because they were talking about some situations in Arkansas and how it can be detrimental. And I knew somebody that was moving to Arkansas, and this would have been like 1964. And she was afraid to move to Arkansas because of what she had read happened at Central High. She felt that that represented the whole state and that the whole state felt very much against progress. So here we go. This is what Central looks like today. Have any of you been down and seen Central or the museum associated?
Is it still open today?
Oh yeah, it's still a functioning high school, but it is the grounds and the building and the museum are operated by the National Park System. So that helps because it helps maintain it. And as you can see, it's a big building. It is 3 blocks long and 5 stories tall. So my homeroom was up kind of almost to the end of the right over there on the top story. And I had classes all the way down here on almost in the basement. And we had 5 minutes to get from class to class. So 1 locker. Sometimes we would share lockers with other people at another end of the building, but No backpacks, because they just hadn't even been invented then for high school students. And we carried all of our books with us pretty much all day. At one point, that pond was there in 1957, and then they filled it in because it had just become a place where things got really dirty, and now they brought it back again as a result of it being sort of a national site. So a little bit of the past, going back to right after the Civil War, when the 14th Amendment was passed. I was listening to the radio yesterday. The 13th Amendment was passed in 150 years ago yesterday, and that was the end of slavery. So then 3 years later, the 14th Amendment, guaranteeing full citizenship, and the Arkansas Constitution, which was also active at that time, called for free education for all children. Then about 30 years later, the Supreme Court said that as long as the facilities, the teachers, the books, everything was equal, you could have separate facilities. That was in 1896. That's what was called separate but equal. And then in 1954, the Supreme Court rethought that because they realized that separate was not equal. The buildings were not as well maintained for the African Americans. The books were secondhand. They were passed down from the white schools to the African American schools. The teachers were not as well trained because they did not go to the same universities and colleges. So separate was not equal. And that was the deciding factor that was the beginning of what happened at Central. So in the fall of 1954, the Little Rock School, of 1955, I'm sorry, of May of 55, the school board came up with a plan for integration that would begin at the senior high and move gradually over 6 years, move down all the way to the first grade. And, but they weren't the first. Actually, Fayetteville was the first to integrate in the state of Arkansas. So for 2 years, from 55 to 57, through the newspaper, through public meetings, the school board and the administration explained to the public what was going to happen in the fall of 1957. Of course, there were those that opposed it, and they formed the Capital Citizens Council, and they brought court cases and a lot of different things to put it off, to stop it. We are not going to integrate. During that 2-year period, a new high school was being built. Little Rock was moving to the west, and so that the high school was built sort of at the western side of town. And there would be, you would have districts that the students in this district were expected to go to this high school and that district. Up until then, there was Little Rock High School, or Little Rock Senior High, and Horace Mann, which was the African American, and there was a technical high school, and now this new one was Hall. Well, I lived in the Hall district, so I would have normally gone to Hall High. But as a senior, I had a choice, and I chose to finish my high school career at Central High. So most of us did. There were close to 1,000 students in my class. And of that 1,000, probably maybe 400 or 500 of them would have been in the Hall district, but only 100 went to Hall. The rest of us chose to go to Central. During this time, court cases were filed, as I said, that Citizens Council. But then on August the 30th, right before school was to start, Judge Ronald Davies said things will proceed, school is going ahead, and the 9 students will attend. Now, those students had been carefully selected from, actually the school district opened it up to anyone who was going to be in high school the following year. And through interviews, and of course the families were involved, knowing that this could be a stressful situation, these 9 students were selected for their academic ability, for their stability as somebody who could handle a stressful situation. Their families were on board, but they were also told, you cannot participate in any extracurricular activities. You can't be in a choir, you can't be in drama, you can't be in sports, you can't go to any of the school dances and the games and things like that. So it was going to be very limiting for them. Then on the September the 1st, that would have been, that year, that would have been Labor Day, the newspaper, the Arkansas Gazette, at that time there was an Arkansas Gazette and an Arkansas Democrat, and they took different views on what should happen. The Gazette said integration needs to take place. The Democrat said no integration. But the Gazette editorial said this city is going to stand up, we're going to show that we're upright citizens, we're going to do this the right way. Then the next night, the governor came on TV. And he said he'd been getting all this information from around the state that the people of the state did not want integration to take place, and they were all coming to Little Rock to make sure it didn't. And he used the phrase, blood will run in the streets if this happens. So he called out the National Guard, which were Arkansas soldiers. Some of them the same age that I was. They had been in school the year before, and now they were standing in the front of the building with their bayonets and their rifles.
It's just interesting to note that we had Mr. Roy Reed here yesterday, and he wrote a biography about Governor Oral Roberts and played a big part in all of this as well. So just interesting that this is starting to all come together.
Mm-hmm. So this is what we saw when we got to school the next day.
Wow.
And you could see how many of them there were, and there were huge, those big troop trucks with sort of a canvas topping and everything. So just to find a parking place was tough, and we didn't have many people. Our kids didn't drive their own cars in those days. We could take our family car one day a week and pick up everybody in the neighborhood. And so, but we did have, and you can see there's an Arkansas emblem on their helmets, and the bayonets are by their sides, and the rifles are between their feet.
You knew the night before that this was probably going to happen.
But not to this extent.
Not to this extent.
Yeah, to drive up and see this.
So you can picture her parents or these kids' parents probably said, this is what is going to be at school tomorrow. But then to drive up and see this is probably
pretty, yeah, it was.
pretty.
In fact, I had within the next couple of weeks, I started dating somebody that was in the a cappella choir with me. And all of a sudden, he didn't come to school. I couldn't figure out where he was. His family had sent him up here to Springdale because they didn't know what was going to be happening, and they were afraid. He didn't stay for more than 3 or 4 days. He said, "I'm not staying up here. I'm coming back." So this is what then Elizabeth Eckford confronted. Now, what was happening as far as she was concerned, her family didn't have television or phone. And so she didn't get the word not to come, whereas the others had been contacted by the woman who was the state director of the NAACP, the National Association of
That's an
Bar.
actual picture of it.
Pardon?
Is
Yeah,
that an actual
that was,
picture?
that was, there was a Gazette photographer who was really good at capturing a lot of what was going on that day.
So the movie that I was watching, you're watching in a class not that long ago, it was actually a lot like this.
Mhm.
How it's actually done.
There was one that was filmed probably maybe in the 1970s.
'Cause it says, like, everything about
And you,
they're not going to go to any activities or anything.
now Elizabeth made her own clothes to come to school that day. First day of school, you dress up, you want to look your best, and she had made those things, so you can tell. But she does have on dark glasses, and that helped her. Because imagine what she was feeling. She had to walk the 3 blocks from where she got off one bus to go to a bus stop at the other end of the building with the screaming, the soldiers with the bayonets blocking her. You can see all different ages in the crowd.
Even adults.
Yes, because the majority of the people out there were adults who had come to make a stop. The girl that you see with her mouth open supposedly was a student, but she didn't stay. She went somewhere else shortly after this. She did not go to Central. And that's the one, that iconic photograph of those people screaming is the one that has lasted. Here, she walked down to the end of the property, the school property, and sat down on a bench. There was a gentleman there from New York, a reporter, and he said later that he told her, "Don't let him see you cry." But he also said that there were people behind her screaming, "Let's string her up. Who's got a rope?" And then the woman, now that man was a white man, and the woman right there is the one that helped her get on the bus to get out of that situation. But from reading her own words later, that day really had and the year really had an impact on her, and it was hard to recover from. But for 2 weeks, the 9 students gathered at the home of Daisy Bates, the woman who was head of the NAACP. And there were students in the school who were making sure that they had their assignments. These were white students who were making sure they had books and their assignments to keep up. So that's just a little idea of what the rest of the student body was actually feeling, trying to help to see that they kept up, they were good students, and they also, during that period of time, got to meet with one of the members of the Supreme Court and went to Washington, D.C., just for the encouragement to keep on trying. You can see it's mostly girls. There were 3 boys. One of them was a senior. The only senior was at Ernest Green. During those 2 weeks, they decided that because the students were not there, they would just bring in the local police, and they were really ill-equipped to handle the whole thing. So, and then that was on the 23rd when the students came for just a couple of periods, but they left soon after. And then it was in that same day that the president stepped in, and he got rid of the local guards and the local police, and he brought in the 101st Airborne from Kentucky. They drove through the night and were there on the campus the next morning to lead the students in, and each one of the students had their own guard that was the same guard every day, following them around through the halls. But there was many more than 9 101st Airborne. You'll see some pictures later. The only issue, they could be outside the classroom, they could be with them in the halls. Obviously, they didn't go into the bathrooms, they didn't go into the cafeteria, they didn't go into PE. And so there were some opportunities that the students were threatened and really faced some really scary things.
Didn't only one of them end up graduating?
Oh, yeah, Ernest graduated, yeah. They tried to get rid of him, but they were unsuccessful. And then the next year, the school was closed, so everybody went to different places after that. So here you see on the 24th that they're being escorted into the building. Now that morning, I've asked, maybe third, fourth period, I've forgotten which one it was, we had a fire drill, but it was really to check clockers for a bomb, because there had been a call coming in. Now Elizabeth Eckford sat right behind me in the class that we were in, and that's where we had to exit out to the grounds. And so we were out there for at least an hour. We could see that there were photographers, and of course the crowds that were across the street were talking. They were not that loud that day, but Elizabeth and I started visiting, and she was asking questions about what it was going to be like in the cafeteria, what was it going to be like in gym, and even how to get there. So at that point, I do remember thinking, why didn't they help these students, take them through a tour of the building, follow their classes, this is where you're going to go here, this is where your locker is, this is what you're going to be doing during this period of time, this is what the cafeteria looks like, you go through the line and do all that. But they didn't do that. And so she had all these questions. And while we were talking, this photograph was taken. So, and that it was taken with, I could tell that there was a man across the street with a very long lens, and so that picture then was taken, and it was in newspapers and magazines all across the United States the next day. And my sister called from St. Louis, and she said, Priscilla's picture's on the front page of the Post-Dispatch. And an uncle called from LA and said the same thing. And so this article, if you want to hold that up, yellow, that came from a Washington, D.C. paper. And you can see, if you ever come across something of yours that you think you're going to want to preserve for a long time, there are better ways to do it than this. But that's what we ended up doing.
Do you want me to put it up here for you, or you?
Well,
You want to look
if
at
they
it?
want to, yeah. Can you get a little idea of what they...
Tell me about these pictures. Most of these, where did you get these?
People sent
Sent
us,
them?
yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Because these kids will be creating these projects, and they'll probably want to have similar pictures,
Mhm.
so that you'll be able to find these.
This, yeah, now, I know that this is there's some of these online, there's some of them in books. A couple of years ago, the author who was writing Elizabeth and Hazel, it's the one down there that has the pictures of the two women at the top. Elizabeth Eckford is the one that I'm talking to there. Hazel is the one that was behind her screaming in that other photograph. And the author of the book managed to get the two women together. And he called me because of that photograph and was asking me all kinds of questions and talking about the teachers in the building. And he kept asking me, well, who are these other people in the picture? And I said, it's been 50 years. I don't know who those people are. There were 2,000 students in that building, and this was actually a lower class that I was taking. I recognized the faces, but I don't know who those people were.
Were you in that image?
Oh, in the image.
And I'm the one on the left. Yeah,
The one in the white shirt at
The
the
one-
tree?
the one that, with the straight dress as opposed to the full skirt.
Oh, yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Wow, they're beautiful.
So we'll take a minute to look through what life was like at Central High in 1957, 58, and then we'll talk about what some of the students experienced and what I observed. So this, you can see people just moving around campus, but in the background you can see those troop trucks. And this a cappella choir was a big part of my year then. We sang all over the state at different events. And a cappella, do you know what a cappella means? No, yeah, so this was a good choir. We had an amazing football team. The entire time I was in high school, we never lost a game. Yeah, they were nationally recognized. So when we scored a victory, it was, so this is from some of the yearbook pages. It was an Elvis era, so there's an Elvis impersonator at a talent show. Then you can see the kind of dances that we had, and then look at the outfits that cheerleaders wore.
Wait, which one is the cheerleaders?
Heavy corduroy skirt.
Which one are
No
they?
legs, you didn't see any legs.
Oh,
And then there were the soldiers on campus. You can see that during the fall, when the weather was nice, they were camped on the practice field in tents. We had a helicopter, again, we had jeeps all over the place. And then in the wintertime, when it got colder, they moved into building a room in the building. And that's the next shot, so, and they had their bunks there. During the day, those that were not in the building protecting were out on the grounds and rifles ready. You can't really see, but these are watching the girls' PE class.
Oh.
Little extra activity, but then somebody else is up on the roof of the building keeping an eye out for something that might happen. And they were civic minded, they gathered toys and everything for the community. But so kind of everyday life for most of us, the same as any high school might happen, but always this undercurrent and just having the military there with their rifles. And the 9 students were harassed, they were tormented, they were in places where they were not protected. Those students that were so inclined felt like they could say all kinds of things to them. One of the girls wrote in her book that in the bathroom, they blocked the bathroom, the stall where she was, and started lighting tissue and throwing it down on her. Minnie Jean said she was thrown against the wall. People got up behind them and stepped on their heels, and they drove by their homes and shot into the windows and threw rocks and messages, and so all year long they were in danger. Okay, that was Minnie Jean. You want to go
I
back?
didn't hear what she said. I'll go back.
Yeah.
What did you say?
Which one got expelled?
Oh, okay.
So Minnie Jean was in my French class, and it was a first year teacher that probably didn't know what she was getting into. And we were arranged alphabetically. So Minnie Jean Brown was on one side of the room, my last name was Thompson, and so I was on the other side of the room. But I watched the person that sat behind her was probably the very worst person in the building to be next to her, because every chance he got, he would say something to her, and she would react. They knew she was going to react. She was probably the most outgoing of the 9. And she wanted to so much to be a part. She really wanted to be in music and drama. That was something that she had hoped would get to do. But she agreed when she came that she would not be allowed to do that. So one day, and I've heard different stories of this event, but I was there, and that young man that I was dating that was prepared to sit up here, he was sitting very close to this event. In the cafeteria, we had long tables with chairs kind of like this. I think they were wooden, but no benches attached to the table. All the chairs moved separately. So Minnie Jean was coming between 2 tables, and she had her tray with her, and some of the boys pushed their chairs back so that she couldn't pass between the tables. And that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. So she took her tray, which happened to be chilly day, and she dumped it on the boys that had pushed their chairs back. As I recall, that was the last event. She had been brought to the office before for speaking out and getting angry, but this one did get her expelled. But the boys really didn't get in trouble.
That's messed up.
Not equal. So, and they tried to get Ernest Green by some girls saying that he had called them and wanted to have a date and things like that. So, but it wasn't true, so it didn't work. And he did graduate with us. And the soldiers were in the stands in the graduation ceremony. Okay? Now, Elizabeth, as I said, she has been interviewed extensively in one of the books, so I did pull some of the things that she said. They're just good things for us to remember. That there were a lot of students there that backed her up, and that she didn't feel like everybody was there to hate her. Yes?
Wasn't it true that someone of them wrote a note to them and ended up being out of the school that 9 wasn't gone, not 8 to go? And
I'm sorry, I didn't really.
1 gone, 8 to go. No, was that a true thing, or was that just?
That wasn't true. I really believe that, I knew the student body president, I knew the daughter of the superintendent of schools, and we all felt like we really wanted the year to go well for us and for the African Americans. There was just that small vocal group that got the attention of the press, and that's the image that lasted from that year. But what Elizabeth says, and this is something that we need to keep in mind, you as individuals and as a group, that what mattered wasn't whether your teacher liked you. Study for yourself. Stand up for the defenseless among you. Reach out to someone being harassed. You might save a life. And then also, after she and Hazel, the other one in the picture, were brought together, she said, we were not reconciled. True reconciliation can occur only when we honestly acknowledge our painful shared past. And this could be applied to any situation, locally, personally, or globally. We can't get past conflict unless we all agree about what our parts in it were. So that was the end of that. We graduated, and Ernest Green graduated, the rest of the 9, the other 8 students were moving up to be juniors and seniors, and there would be more students coming in the fall. You might have a question?
You said that the students, some students were making fun of them. Did you make fun of them?
No.
Did you stand up to them?
I stood up and I was not a real outgoing, but I stood up like the fact that I visited with Elizabeth Eckford and it was captured on national press. My family got targeted and threatened. But I was never directly threatened, but I had no reason not to be friendly with those students. I didn't come in contact with them that much, but I was friendly and visited with them. But the next fall, right before school started, the governor got the legislature to pass a law to stop integration. And that closed the schools for the year, the Little Rock schools. Those students who would have gone on had to find other places to go. That would be the African Americans and the whites. There was no high school. Some private schools opened, but others, if they went to small towns around Little Rock, Mableville, expanded and took in some of the students. People moved to go and live with relatives in other cities and states. Some of those who would have been seniors that year were able to go ahead and test into universities. So they did not get a high school diploma. They went directly from their junior year to college if they could test into that situation. So everybody had to adapt, and right at the last minute, they didn't know school was going to open until right before school was to start. And that really put a negative view of the world on Little Rock, Arkansas. So there were some, it was very difficult for anyone to stand up to this segregationist group. If someone advertised in the Arkansas Gazette, their business was targeted and boycotted.
Can you say that again?
If someone advertised in the Arkansas Gazette, their business was boycotted by the segregationists. So just speaking out in a paper that supported integration could have a negative impact on your business. And so there was a group of women, you see 4 of them here, and they call themselves the Women's Emergency Committee. These women were leaders in the community, and they, I guess we would call them Teflon people. By that I mean they couldn't be injured by threats. They were so respected and so secure that they could speak out without it affecting their income or their homes. But there were about 100 other women on this community, in this committee that didn't reveal who they were and worked behind the scenes to make a change in the city of Little Rock. What they had to do was get rid of the current school board, the ones that had closed the school and who were against integration. And they had to promote and get a whole nother school board elected. So for the whole year of 1958, up until that school board election, these women worked to get that accomplished, and they did. They got it accomplished. So in the spring of 1959, the new school board was elected, and the schools reopened that fall. this is what they would say. They said, "We're deeply concerned that the young people are the ones to bear the hardships of this tragic situation. We're going to do everything in our power to open the 4 high schools." That would be the Central, the Tech High School, the new hall, and Horace Mann. So I kind of summarize that. They got to know. But during that time, if anybody knew what was happening with those people, they got threatening phone calls. Ministers in the pulpit who spoke out for reason and equality were often lost their positions. The mothers of the Gazette paper boys said that got calls that their sons would be harmed, and then the economic boycotts of anybody's business that supported immigration. All right, we got that, we talked about that. But then 4 years later, when they really did a survey and looked at what had happened as a result of closing those schools and the image that Little Rock had, and Arkansas as a whole had, because of this whole issue, was that absolutely no new industry came to that town. No new industry. What an impact on the economy.
Okay, I have a question. What was the cause of everyone, who was the cause, was this the cause of everyone, like, black and white being able to go to the same schools?
That was the reason for all of this. Some people did not want that to happen. They thought, some of the things they said, well, if we let blacks and whites go to the same school, they're going to marry. And that was against the law in many places. And this is a tough thing to accept, but it still happens. That some people are afraid that if they lose, if somebody else gets the same rights that they have, that it's going to make them lose their rights. If I give you the same rights that I have, they say, then that takes it away from me. It's like there's a limited number of rights to go around. But we know that's not true. And so to be fearful of sharing what everybody has in the way of equal rights is it's kind of scary that some people feel that way. They may not say that, but that's basically what I have come to believe.
We have about 5 more minutes.
Any other questions? That's pretty much
Is that
it.
okay? Any questions?
Yes,
What is your opinion on it?
I was in favor of integration, and I was hoping that the year would go well for everybody. And that's the way I was raised, that it was the right thing to do.
I wanted to let you know that I see some of you taking pictures and video, and that's perfectly fine, but what will happen is we videoed it and we'll link it to the board portal. I should have told y'all that earlier, I'm sorry. That way, you don't have to take pictures of the slides and the quotes. It'll link to the board portal. Okay?
Yes.
Whose faces are harmed?
I'm sorry.
Whose faces are harmed in the Central High School?
Okay, those are called Corinthian columns, but back behind it, that is a mosaic tiger. Okay, and it was a gift from a senior class later after I had graduated, but I put it in there because I'm kind of proud of it, because my mother created that.
Oh,
Yes. And my mother was on that Women's Emergency Committee, but I never knew it until 1998 when the names of those women were published in the paper, 30 years later, or 40 years later. They kept it secret who participated in that, making the change, yes.
What was the name of the football team?
The Central Tigers, that's the tiger. Yes.
1 or 2 more questions? This is a big deal to be able to have a speaker like this. This is a very different type of learning than what we're used to. We've been working on just researching just on the computer. So just hearing you and seeing your face with the emotion it adds a different level to our research. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
How many years did you live in Little Rock?
Let's see, I went to college in 1959, so from 19 years then. And then after college, I went back to Little Rock for 1964, 12 years, and then we moved to Fayetteville.
Last question right back here.
What was the football team called again?
Central Tigers.
We're going to dismiss, but we'll do it in, I'm going to do it by pods and teachers. When we do dismiss, I am going to ask that you maybe try to swing by and just say thank you. You do that a lot of times after a lecture. You just say thank you and then we head on back to class.
Appreciate your attention.
They are
Is
fantastic.
that a yearbook?
That's the yearbook, the pics. And a lot of the pictures came from that, it's like the football and the dances and the
If you were in Miss Turner's morning or afternoon, I'd like to see you stand and come swing by and say thank you, Miss Turner's, please.
good luck with your project.